I'll now call on Mr. Wall for the staff presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Porter, and thank you, members of the public, for joining us this evening at this compact hearing to provide testimony on the proposed changes to transit facilities at the Takoma Metrorail station. I am Stan Wall, Director of Real Estate and Station Planning at Metro. This presentation is the same as the hard copy that was made available to you as you arrived this evening. I'll be walking through 9 topics to provide context for this evening's hearing: background, an overview of existing conditions, a summary of the station access analysis, a review of a proposed concept plan, an overview of how the project addresses accessibility, a review of circulation by all modes, an overview of our proposed interim parking approach, a summary of the traffic analysis, and finally a quick review of next steps that will follow this hearing. On March 27th of this year, WMATA's Board of Directors authorized the negotiation execution of an amended and restated Takoma Joint Development Sales Agreement and the holding of this public hearing as required by the WMATA Compact among its member jurisdictions to receive public comment on the proposed changes. Existing facilities and proposed changes and the reasons for the changes are described in the docket that has been made available to the public online at www.wmata.com/hearings, and hard copies have been made available at the library in Takoma Park, Maryland, and Takoma Park, DC. There are also a few hard copies of the docket available this evening for review at this hearing. Existing conditions at the Takoma station consist of an elevated Metrorail station with 2 entrances, the one to the north having an elevator access to the platform, and the one to the south having escalator access to the platform. A kiss and ride lot with access from Eastern Avenue containing 141 metered spaces, 6 reserved ADA spaces for disabled customers, 3 motorcycle spaces, 5 A spaces for waiting motorists, and 5 additional spaces. There are 9 bus bays with access from both Eastern Avenue and Cedar Street, and there are bicycle facilities consisting of bike racks accommodating 104 bicycles and bike lockers for up to 60 bicycles. The proposed changes result from the findings of the station access analysis and a proposed housing development on part of the site, and from community input informing that proposed development. Metro staff focused first on assessing transit access requirements and potential enhancement to those requirements. Findings and recommendations of this analysis included the existing meter lot is only used 50% of its capacity, and other parking facilities are adequate for the foreseeable future, though it would be desirable to have additional curbside queuing space for passenger pickup. 2 main pedestrian desire lines should be accommodated by dedicated walkways across the grassy area east of the bus bays to Eastern Avenue and Cedar Avenue, and across the parking lot from the bus bays to the northern entrance of the parking lot. As the station currently has high bicycle ridership, future plans should accommodate additional expansion of bicycle facilities. Consideration should be given to adding a new bus bay so that an existing bus bay might be used for passenger drop-off, and though there are no currently private shuttles providing service to the station, with future development, including the Walter Reed campus, provision should be made for new spaces for shuttle access. An earlier development proposal took up an extensive portion of the site, including most of the existing open space area, and resulted in an expensive reconfiguration of WMATA bus bays and parking facilities. Following consultation with local community leaders and the developer, WMATA proposed an apartment complex in the space now occupied by the Kiss and Ride lot without disruption to the existing open space area or the bus loop that surrounds the open space. The resulting plan for WMATA facilities shown in a concept plan includes a kiss and ride lot with access from Eastern Avenue. The lot now contains 85 metered spaces, 27 spaces for taxis, shuttles, driver-attended waiting spaces, and reserved spaces for people with disabilities, and drop-off areas for customers. The proposed plan also shows a new bike station for 105 bikes that will be installed by WMATA, an additional bus bay, and a layover bay and pedestrian sidewalks through the open space area and through the new kiss and ride lot connecting to Eastern Avenue. These conform to the recommendations that were found in the access analysis. This cross-section shows a cutaway view through the building to provide a better understanding of how the proposed new kiss and ride lot will be located below the proposed building toward the north entrance of the Metrorail station. The proposed kiss and ride lot also has enough height to accommodate future shuttle buses in the kiss and ride lot. On this slide, a parking accessibility diagram is shown comparing the existing and proposed distances for the reserved spaces and drop-off area for people with disabilities. The new location of the accessible spaces will be approximately 120 feet from the elevator entrance of the station, 30 feet closer than today's accessible spaces. The proposed curbside accessible drop-off will be approximately 65 feet distance from the station entrance. Circulation by pedestrians, residential parking, metro parking, and buses is depicted on this page. Coming out of the recommendations from the station access analysis, one of the most significant enhancements will be to upgrade informal pedestrian paths to paved sidewalks throughout the open space. Further, we've also accommodated walkways through the Kiss and Ride parking area to enable safe passage for pedestrians through the building to Eastern Avenue. During the construction of the replacement Kiss and Ride lot, anticipated to last approximately 20 months, the Kiss and Ride lot will be considerably reduced. Approximately 50 spaces will be available for parking, in contrast to the 160 spaces that are total spaces that are currently available. Pickup and drop-off of passengers can occur curbside, as is informally done at the present. The interim parking plan is shown in this page. As the developer has zoning and building entitlement processes to go through, it is not likely that construction would start on the project for another 2 to 3 years. WMATA also conducted a traffic analysis to assess the expected impact of the proposed development on the Kiss and Ride lot, bus operations, and surrounding streets. The analysis is described in the Takoma Metro Station Traffic Analysis Technical Memorandum, April 2014, that was provided as an exhibit in the docket. The traffic analysis concludes that the proposed development will add only 44 and 54 vehicles respectively in the morning and evening peak periods, a negligible addition to the existing and projected traffic. To improve overall traffic conditions, whether or not development at Takoma Station happens, the traffic analysis suggests optimizing signal timing in the vicinity of the site and providing lane configuration improvements, including adding a 100-foot long right turn pocket on the westbound Carroll Street before Cedar Street, and eliminating curbside parking on northbound Piney Branch Road between Dahlia Street and Eastern Avenue. At this point in time, the public record is open. Any comments that are not provided through this evening's hearing must be received by 5 p.m. on June 30th via email or postal email per the instructions in the hearing notice. WMATA staff will then compile all of these comments and provide responses and circulate them in the form of a draft report for public comment in September. The final compact hearing report will include a recommendation to amend the adopted regional system plan, and the report and amended plan will be subject to WMATA board approval. After board approval, the developer will then begin the formal pursuit of the DC entitlements through the plan unit development process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Now we'll go on to public comments. As I said, I'm going to start with the elected officials. Is Danielle Perry, representing Congressman Chris Van Hollen, here?
Good evening. My name is Danielle Perry. I'm here representing Congressman Chris Van Hollen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have a letter from Congressman Van Hollen that he would like to be read into the docket. Dear WMATA Board, I'm writing on behalf of my constituents in the city of Takoma Park to express concerns about the joint development agreement under consideration on the Takoma Park Metro site. As I understand it, the WMATA intends to sell property adjacent to the Metro station and located in the District of Columbia to a private developer for a multifamily residential development. While the developer has made significant improvements over the initial design proposed several years ago, my constituents continue to have serious concerns about the impact of the development on the neighborhood, which includes parts of both the District of Columbia and Maryland, and is part of a National Register historic districts in both jurisdictions. As you know, the current plan presents higher densities and greater heights than the Takoma Park Central District Plan adopted in 2002 and incorporated into the current comprehensive plan. While I understand that WMATA's primary focus has been on transportation elements of the plan, the process at WMATA's presents a critical avenue for my constituents who do not currently have party status in the DC Plan Unit development process to be heard on a development that has significant impacts on their neighborhood. Additionally, a number of their concerns, including pedestrian safety around the position of the building's loading dock and the increase in residential parking spaces, have an impact on transit functionality and revenue. Of particular concern is an independent traffic analysis that says that the traffic study provided from WMATA significantly understates the traffic impacts that will be generated by the development. I ask that you respond to the issues raised in that report and, if justified, prepare an amended WMATA traffic report. Any project in this space should endeavor to maximize utilization of the Takoma Park Metro Station and limit additional vehicular traffic. Additionally, I call your attention to the station's unique position within the District of Columbia's Takoma Park National Register District and adjacent to Maryland's Takoma Park National Register District. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act calls on federal agencies, including the Federal Transit Administration, to take into account the effects of projects on historic properties and resolve adverse effects. I expect that this review will be part of the development process and ask that you keep me informed on its progress. Given the direct impact of this project on my constituents in the city of Takoma Park, I ask that you continue to work with local residents to come to a mutually agreeable result prior to final WMATA board approval of the joint development agreement. Thank you for your consideration of this request. Sincerely, Chris Van Hollen, Member of Congress.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Can I ask if people not applaud each speaker? It'll cut into the time that we've got for people to speak, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Is Tom Hucker here? He was speaking on behalf of District 20, and I see State Senator Jamie Raskin is here. Are you here in his place? Or would you like to speak in his place? Shall we skip you and go on? All right. If there are elected officials who when I call them, they're not here, what we'll do is we'll wait until they get here, and then we can move them into the queue at that point. Mayor Bruce Williams.
Good evening. My name is Bruce Williams. I'm mayor of the city of Takoma Park. Thank you for providing this opportunity to comment on the proposed changes to the Takoma Metro Station. The Takoma Metro Station is a primary gateway to our community. A large percentage of our residents use the station on a regular basis, and Takoma Park homes on Eastern Avenue look directly at the station and the site of the proposed development. Maintaining easy access to the Takoma Metro Station is critical to the city of Takoma Park. And because of its location, so is ensuring that any development on the property is attractive and well-designed. Because the Takoma Metro is such a critical facility to residents and businesses throughout Takoma Park, the City of Takoma Park has monitored the development proposals at the site from the beginning and has consistently provided comments that are factual and constructive. City Council Resolution 2013-68 is attached to our testimony and represents our position on the proposal being considered today. Takoma Park was built around transit in the late 1800s. Our community continues to strongly support transit and walkable communities. As noted in the access analysis provided by WMATA, 55% of the people entering the Takoma Park Metro Station come by walking to the station, and 29% come by bus, primarily ride-on. Many other transit riders come by bicycle or are dropped off at one of the two station entrances. In the final design for development of the Takoma Metro site, the access by pedestrians, bicyclists, handicapped patrons, and bus riders should be easy, safe, comfortable, and attractive, and the transit facilities must be of an adequate capacity to accommodate the community's transit needs for decades. The access analysis provides helpful data and recommendations concerning pedestrian, bicycle, and bus access for the transit facilities. Special attention should be paid to the need for wide sidewalks where pedestrians want to walk, benches for those who need to rest, convenient parking and drop-off areas for handicapped patrons, a good pathway for and connections to the Metropolitan Branch Trail, and sufficient bicycle parking. There should also be enough short-term parking spaces for transit users so that our residents can continue to find a space to park at the metro station to go downtown for an appointment. Any development of the property should be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods in Takoma Park, Maryland, and Washington, D.C. Takoma Park City Council member Seth Grimes will present comments concerning development impacts on surrounding neighborhoods. Councilmember Grimes represents Ward 1, immediately adjacent to the Tacoma Metro Station. In general, Takoma Park is concerned with the massing and design of the proposed building along Eastern Avenue and with maintaining green parkland on the property. We're also concerned about traffic congestion on Eastern Avenue that the traffic analysis shows will worsen from Piney Branch Road to the Metro property, and for which no recommendations for improvement were proposed. Redevelopment of the Tacoma Metro Station property will establish the image of Tacoma, D.C. and Takoma Park, Maryland for decades. We want to see our gateway be designed and constructed to the highest standards. The whole area around the station should function smoothly as a transit hub. The building and site should be very attractive and meet LEED standards for environmental design, and the redevelopment should complement the surrounding neighborhoods. Because of the critical role of the Metro Station in our community, we ask to be a partner in the design and design review process, and we ask for the WMATA Board's assistance in assuring that a partnership is a reality. Thank you for this opportunity to comment on the proposed changes.
Thank you. Councilmember Mark Elrich.
Thank you. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity to come and speak today. And this, as I think the mayor knows, is something that I'm vaguely familiar with since we were dealing with this 8 years ago when I left the city council. So my formal statement was that I'm writing this to express concerns about the planned development project at Metro's Takoma Station. As you may know, this site will affect not only DC residents, but also many residents who live in Maryland in close proximity. Yet many of my constituents have indicated that there has been very little effort on the part of the developer to engage them. While they're generally supportive of smart growth, development near metro stations, they would like to have their voices heard on those aspects of the plan which will directly affect them. This is a reasonable request that I wholeheartedly support. I request that you carefully consider concerns about whether the plan exceeds zoning limits, is based on inadequate traffic study, is inconsistent with the Takoma Park master plan, is too close to the street, is poorly designed, and is aesthetically incompatible with a residential historic district. I also request that the developer agree to the establishment of a neighborhood design working group, which includes appropriate Maryland representation, before you hold the final vote on the hearing record. And I hope you'll consider seriously the impacts of this development on our jurisdiction. I want to add a couple of other notes related to that. The first is the importance of the timing of when you make a deal. I mean, I've watched a lot of stuff in the county from the other side of the world of deal making. And it is very hard to claw back from a developer the things that a community wants once a deal's been made. Your leverage and the community's leverage is before you make a deal. And having the community and the developer work together to get something that both of them want, assure both that the deal can go to WMATA without substantial amount of objection, and the developer won't face a long-term fight at the other end of the process. But in my experience, making deals first and hoping to negotiate a happy ending at the end of that doesn't always work so well. And the other thing I want to talk about is neighborliness. We had a development on Eastern Avenue in Montgomery County that was proposed, and I thought it was excessive. And the neighbors on the DC side of the line thought it was excessive, that it violated their understanding of what was going to be built on the Montgomery County side of the line, and that for years had been assured that there would not be these negative impacts on their neighborhood. And the county went ahead and was proposing to approve a plan that was, in their mind, very excessive, very tall, very dense. And I supported the neighbors, both on the Montgomery side and on the DC side, because I thought they had a right to a community on the terms in which they had bought there, moved there, lived there, and with the expectations that were in the master plans. And in a miracle of miracles, a court actually ruled in front of the neighbors and said what the planning board had done was unacceptable and violated people's expectations, and actually ruled in favor of the neighborhood groups. But the important point of that is we share borders. And I don't believe as a Montgomery County elected official that I should do things on my side of the border that have detrimental impacts on the Washington side of a border. And I would hope that the approach would be the same from the district. And I hope that WMATA in general would look at places where we have shared interests. Friendship Heights is another place where we'd be really sensitive to what everybody feels about the project and not just say this is in one jurisdiction and so at the other it's of no concern to anybody else. I think how we share space and how we develop together is really, really important, and I think we can go forward successfully. I've talked to a lot of the folks involved in this. Nobody is saying don't build anything. And nobody's saying you should only build single-family homes here and that's the only thing that's compatible. There is a recognition, as there was 8 years ago. The debate in Takoma Park then wasn't whether you should build something on that property. The debate was the number of units. And it wasn't like 0 or some tiny little number. It was a large number or a much larger number. And as I understand this discussion with the people I've talked to, they recognize that this is a good place for development. We should take advantage of it, but that in that context, you really should pay attention to and be sensitive to the neighborhood around it. And I think it's possible to get units there and a decent number of units there and still respect the surrounding community in Takoma Park. So I hope that WMATA will consider that, but I really hope that you will avoid making a deal until you've got a better agreement. This has been going on for 8 years, so I hardly see the rush to closing the deal as the letter from the developer suggested in the next few weeks. There is no need after 8 years to rush into a deal. What there is a need for is to, I think, get a broader community buy-in. So I thank you and look forward to following up on this.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next person is Councilmember Seth Grimes. I apologize for the problems with the microphone. I think we have to deal with what's here at the site, so thank you.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm Seth Grimes, the City of Takoma Park Council member and the city's representative on the Transportation Planning Board of the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. The Takoma Park ward I represent is directly adjacent to the Takoma Metro station. My constituents walk and bicycle to the station and occasionally drive there using the station's transit user parking spaces. They are heavy users of Metrorail and the station's Metrobus and ride-on buses. And I'll say it's great to see so many of my constituents and other Takoma Park and Takoma DC neighbors here tonight. I do recognize a few people whom I know to support the current plan, just a handful in the audience, including Cheryl Court from the Advocacy Coalition for Smarter Growth, which is funded by the developer EYA. Takoma Park was founded in 1883 by Benjamin Franklin Gilbert. Gilbert bought land and sold lots in a Washington, D.C. and Maryland area surrounding a station on the metropolitan branch of the Baltimore and Ohio Railway. Takoma Park was the region's first railroad suburb. B.F. Gilbert and Takoma Park pioneered transit-oriented development in the Washington, D.C. region. We remain dedicated to transit-oriented development 130 years later. The City of Takoma Park and the Takoma Metro community will gladly welcome true transit-oriented development. The proposed EYA building does not qualify. I urge WMATA to reject the building and to compel the developer to create a building that instead favors transit users, integrated with, rather than in defiance of, the surrounding neighborhoods, working in true cooperation with stakeholders, rather than in the opposition that we have experienced to date. The Maryland residential neighborhoods closest to the Takoma Transit Facility consist almost exclusively of single-family homes, including directly across Eastern Avenue Northwest from the planned development. The nearby Washington, D.C. residences are single-family homes and small-scale apartments. Our historic designation is official. The Washington, D.C. and Maryland residential neighborhoods and the Old Takoma Commercial Corridor and the Takoma Metro Station are within United States National Register historic districts. The Takoma Metro parcel that would be developed is split between two zoning designations, residential fronting Eastern Avenue Northwest with a height limit imposed by zoning of 40 feet, and commercial on the rear of the property toward the metro and railroad tracks with a 50-foot limit. A nearby Takoma Neighborhood Commercial Overlay District was created in 2005, years after this project first surfaced, with a height limit of 55 feet, and this parcel was not included in that overlay. Clearly, it's the intention of the Washington, D.C. government that the development not rise to the 72 feet currently proposed in a 40-foot zone by EYA. Scale matters. Neighborhood compatibility and impact matter. Transitions matter. They matter to residents, and as embodied in the site zoning in the Historic District Regulations and the Tacoma Central District Plan, they regulate factors that include height, setbacks, and compatibility. They govern development at the site, therefore they must be considered by WMATA. Height 80% in excess of zoning limits with massing of 5 stories just 23 feet from Eastern Avenue, even with the upper 2 stories set back an additional 8 to 10 feet, all within a residential zone, fails compatibility. The current building design includes a multi-level parking deck in the rear of the building with far too many residential parking spaces, a ratio of 4 spaces for each 6 units, given the location next to a transit station. A Washington, D.C. zoning rewrite currently underway would reduce the required parking ratio for a site in close proximity, like this one, to a transit station to 1 to 6, rather than 4 to 6, a quarter of the ratio EYA proposes. The excess of residential parking will cost WMATA transit user revenue. It is a direct contribution to the excessive size of the building and to the traffic and transit user parking impact, which WMATA Commission studies already underestimate. If the developer reduced the number of residential parking spaces or located them under the building, like every other recently constructed apartment building in the Tacoma metro area, the building size could be reduced. Further, there would be fewer new cars on surrounding residential streets, answering community concerns about traffic impact that will hamper metro and ride-on buses that use those same streets. Excessive residential parking creates the need for 3 lanes of surface driveways to the rear of the building. Space for these driveways comes at the expense of transit user parking and buffers to the neighboring apartment building. The proposal reduces the number of metered parking spaces for transit users from 114 to 85. Fewer transit user parking spaces will mean reduced use of Tacoma transit facilities and, again, lower transit resident revenue. The issues can be fixed. I ask WMATA to create a new neighborhood design working group and mandate that the developer work with that group and the City of Takoma Park and other concerned parties to the satisfaction of those parties to revise the design before WMATA accepts the compact hearing report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. State Senator Jamie Raskin. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. We're trying to create injuries here.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor Porter. Delighted to be here with the board. With your permission, I'll just use about 90 seconds and save the rest for Delegate Hucker, who's on his way, if that's okay. So, but I am introducing a letter on behalf of the legislative delegation from District 20, which is Delegate Hucker, Delegate Sheila Hickson, and Delegate Heather Mazier, as well as myself, and I'm the state senator for the delegation. And we're, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but essentially we're just asking the board to schedule action on approval of the report for the compact hearing on the development only after there's been more comprehensive consideration of the concerns that have been raised about how the proposed development will affect the adjacent residential neighborhoods, both on the Maryland side and in DC. And we're convinced that a neighborhood design working group launched by EYA and representatives of affected neighborhoods in cooperation with the board would ensure balanced consideration of neighbors' concerns and their ideas about how to make the development a complete success for the community. While we have been and remain very supportive of residential development at the Metro site, we're concerned that the project has not yet been subjected to a level of review sufficient to ensure that the board has all the information necessary to move to final approval. And as elected officials in Maryland, we believe for several reasons that it might be premature for WMATA to take action at this point, sending the development proposal to the planned unit development process. And the letter just outlines several reasons why we think this might be one additional step, not as some kind of delaying game. You could build a time certain into it, but just so the kinds of concerns that you're hearing raised tonight can be more thoroughly ventilated and then integrated into the proposal. And with that, I will leave further substantive remarks to Delegate Hucker when he comes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Sarah Green. Sure. Right over here.
Good evening, Mayor Porter, Mr. Wall. Sorry, I don't know your name, sir.
Blair Fishburne.
Mr. Fishburne. Good evening. My name is Sarah Green, and I am the Advisory Neighborhood Commissioner for 4B01 in the District of Columbia. This is a community of about 2,000 people, including a whole lot of people on Eastern Avenue who are incredibly affected by this project. And this includes people who live in apartments, they live in a cooperative, they're homeowners in a cooperative apartment building on Eastern Avenue. Many of these people have lived, whether they're owners of apartments or tenants, many of these people have lived in their communities, in their home, for 20 years. And I think I should note right now, first of all, that Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4B has already sent you detailed resolutions about this project, and they will be submitted again for the record. I am speaking at this point for myself because some of the comments I'm making are not part of ANC 4B's recommendations. But ANC 4B's recommendations stand, and I support them. One of the things that I think is really angering to me about this, in addition to the fact that this is a very large project, it's way too big, it does not conform in so many ways to the Takoma Central District Plan, which is the master plan that I helped develop along with about 100 other people in very hot and gloomy, in a very hot room over about a year. We developed this plan, and WMATA is ignoring it. But one of the other things that I think people are not aware of about this proposal is the impact on affordable housing. I think there's a huge irony here that a number of people who do support this project will say, well, more density, more affordable housing. City needs affordable housing. That's important. Well, we have affordable housing on Eastern Avenue. We have about 100 units of it right now. And if you build this project the way you're proposing to build it, you're going to go very high, you're going to shut out their light and air, you're going to loom over, it's a 72-foot building, you're going to loom over a 3-story brick apartment building. You're going to run your driveway, you're going to run all these cars past windows, very close to somebody's window and front door. Now they have a buffer park, they won't. So you're going to degrade the quality of life for the 100 units of affordable housing already on Eastern Avenue for what? To put a handful, maybe, of affordable units into a building that is going to have a lot of small studios? You know, I mean, this is not honest. It's not a community-spirited proposal. What people are asking for is something that fits this neighborhood, that respects the Takoma Historic District, both in DC and in Maryland, that will operate like a neighbor. And one other last thing, I was just particularly offended by the letter that EYA sent. I mean, they have got a bunch of money, so they can send out a bunch of letters, and they did. And it was a very cleverly, carefully written letter. And I just want to read one quote from it. And what Mr. Lester said was, WMATA recently voted unanimously to approve a contract with EYA to develop their property. This process will take a number of years to complete, and we are at the beginning stages, very beginning stages. We are currently finalizing the details of our agreement with WMATA and look forward to beginning the detailed design process in the coming months. I really hope he was misstating that, because it really sounds, if EYA is finalizing an agreement with WMATA, it leads me to ask, why are we here? You should not be finalizing anything with EYA until you listen to testimony, at least listen to the testimony. I mean, really, at least listen to the testimony before you allow anybody to finalize anything. And that's just offensive to me. EYA didn't mention this hearing or anything else. So we're asking for basic fairness, both in the way you are running this hearing and listening to us, and in the way eventually you will design a building that I hope a lot of people in this community will support. Thank you again for listening, and I continue to have faith in government despite some of these issues. Thanks again.
Thank you. Commissioner Faith Wheeler?
Thank you for this opportunity.
The microphone's right there next
That's
to you.
right. Okay, is that better? Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and for holding this compact hearing, which I understand is required in any case by you. My name is Faith Wheeler, and I am staunchly pro-development. I first came to D.C. in 1962. I have lived in Tacoma, D.C. since 1978. One of the several reasons that I moved here was to do my part in helping this community improve. I have worked on this project since 2001 and have been an ANC commissioner since 2003. I am, however, speaking for myself, as Commissioner Green did, and in any case supportive of the ANC resolution. Also, I'd like to say I happen to have a personal stake in climate renewal. What does development actually mean? Looking up the word development, we see phrases such as viability, standard of living, economic health, quality of life, consideration of community-wide or regional environmental implications. In my 30 years of evaluating programs for the Board of Directors of the Inter-American Development Bank and training international staff and project teams for the Inter-American Development Bank, I learned that promoting development is far more than bricks and mortar, even if placed next to a transit station. Some folks would have you believe that that's enough. The basic principle is, how would a development project actually affect the community? How would it affect people? What would be the lasting implications and impact, economically, financially, environmentally, regarding transportation, socially? In other words, what's the entire picture? What's the whole picture in the near and the distant future? This particular project could be an outstanding model of sustainability and diversity, reinforcing a strong sense of community and sense of place, anchors that are sorely needed in this society in this day and age. Instead, we have interests taking over that transgress those critical values. And here I'm going to be a bit sarcastic because it makes me angry. Terry Aiken and Bob Youngentab of EYA still see this as a good opportunity to make some money. They, through Jack Lester, hope that no one notices their current proposal soars 30 feet above the DC zoning limits next to Eastern Avenue and 20 feet above DC zoning limits in the zone a few feet back. Not one of the other 3 multifamily units built in recent years, or the 3 more approved, are above the DC zoning height limit of 50 and 55 for Tacoma Central, which is in the Tacoma Overlay Zone. Terry Aiken and Bob Youngentab are apparently not bothered that their proposal would take away a lovely wooded grove enjoyed by residents in the 3-story modest apartment building next door and lay in its place 3 access egress lanes to EYA's parking garage. Affordable housing be damned. Those people should just go out and get a good job, right? And the single-family homes across the street, who cares about them? After all, they're in Maryland, right? Just suck it up. Tacoma Park Historic District, what's that? Who cares? That's so yesterday. And to save the planet, we've got to pack in as many people as possible right next to the metro station. The more the better. Bring them on. Taking off my sarcastic hat, the fact is we already have some 650 relatively new units built or approved to be built within 2 to 3 blocks of the metro station. That does not include Whittier Gardens and Butternut Court, both in my single-member district, beautifully renovated in the past few years in a way that truly enhances our community. Tacoma is a special place with a unique history of pioneering public transit, true diversity, and healthy green living. This is what we need to celebrate and enhance with something that exemplifies Tacoma, a building that looks something like this, drawn in 2006. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now take non-elected officials. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read a name and then a second person who will be the person right after the first name I read. Joseph, and I apologize for the name, Joseph Radzovich, to be followed by Sabrina Eaton.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Radzavich. I'm a proud resident of 7050 Eastern Avenue, the Elm Garden Apartments, and I rise tonight in strong opposition to the current WMATA EYA proposal. And I want to share with you this sign that my neighbors and I have put together, a collective cross-border effort of Takoma Park, Maryland and Tacoma, D.C. It reads, right-sized, not supersized development. And that really sums up the way we feel about this proposal. I'll note that the ANC, Advisory Neighborhood Commission, and Takoma Park, Maryland passed resolutions regarding this development. And since those resolutions have been passed, not a single change, to my knowledge, has been made. What does that say about this process? There are issues with this process in terms of the height of the building, as tall as 70 feet, not within the zoning regulations. The overall density is so large, the footprint of the building takes up not just the existing parking garage, or excuse me, parking lot, but it destroys the green space buffer area next to the garden apartments, of which I am a resident, and my fellow residents are very concerned. There are issues with traffic. Already, we have seen that the traffic study from WMATA is flawed. There's also issues with compatibility with pedestrian and disabled access. This is a historic district. What about the character of the neighborhood? We recommend a neighborhood design working group, and not a work group that's stocked full of development-friendly people who have connections to the development industry, but people who have a connection to this neighborhood, this immediately adjacent neighborhood. Further, I recommend that we not approve any joint development agreement unless it is fully compliant with the zoning regulations, including a Tacoma Central District Plan, which requires a 50-foot buffer. And lastly, I'll just stand on this. I think that clock is wrong. I don't think you want to give me another 2 minutes and 40 minutes to speak, but this is a very special place. We live in a country, the United States of America, where I can get up in front of an audience like this, and tomorrow I will wake up in the morning. In another country, that may not happen. There are a lot of people over the years who have fought in this very neighborhood. The only Civil War battle fought in this area was fought right here in this neighborhood to preserve the right for what I'm doing now, to preserve the right to have development that is sensitive and compatible to all of the community, not just those who are wealthy and well-connected. Back in the 50s and 60s, we had a group called Neighbors Incorporated. We had great community activists like Sam Abbott from Takoma Park, who prevented this neighborhood from being destroyed by a highway. We stood up to the powerful in the Civil War. We stood up to the powerful in the 50s and 60s. And my friends, today, 2014, we will stand up to injustice today. We will ensure that the community will be heard and that the development is compatible with the community, compatible with real transit, compatible with the interests of this community, and sensitive to all members of the community, not just those with deep pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. Sabrina Eaton, to be followed by Jeffrey Silverstone.
Hi, thanks for coming out here today to hear our testimony. I'm Sabrina Eaton, and I live directly across Eastern Avenue from the Metro parking lot this proposal would occupy. I've lived there for 20 years. While this design is an improvement over the two-car garage townhouses that EYA previously wanted to build on the property, the present incarnation is still too large for the site and would tower over adjacent apartment buildings and single-family homes such as my own. Their last plan was horizontal sprawl. This is vertical sprawl. The area zoning caps the height of buildings on that site at 50 feet. Yet, EYA's plan would be 72 feet tall, roughly 20 feet higher than any other apartment building in the Metro Station area. The Tacoma Central District Plan calls for a landscape buffer of 50 feet around the existing apartment buildings and condominiums on Eastern Avenue. Yet, EYA's plan shows no buffer whatsoever to protect surrounding properties. EYA's proposal also doesn't meet the Tacoma Central District Plan requirement. The development on the site meshed with the existing community to preserve and enhance Tacoma's small-town village character. Its current supersized plan undercuts the historic small-town vibe that draws people to this area. It should be scaled back to fit in with the rest of the neighborhood. Overgrowth is not the same thing as smart growth. The only parties for whom this development is smart are EYA, which wants a supersized building to get supersized profits, and entities funded by EYA, like the so-called Coalition for Smarter Growth, whose leaders have endorsed every EYA plan for this site, including those that the developer and WMATA subsequently rejected. That group is clearly a cheerleader for its corporate donors, and its input should be viewed with great suspicion. Misleading sales pitches for this project by EYA and its cheerleaders are another concern. They say it will provide a 90-car garage for Metro patrons without mentioning the 60-space loss of public parking that entails. They describe the current parking as underutilized without mentioning that the bizarre hours WMATA has imposed on the lot are what curtail its use. They describe the building as 3 to 4 stories tall without mentioning that it will really be 6 or 7 stories tall because it sits on top of parking. They say they'll work with residents on its design when all they've done so far is host sales parties where they seek endorsement letters from people whose lunch they just bought. If they really intend to partner with residents on the design as they claimed in their letter that they sent out, they should actually do it and stop dishing out baloney. The developers of the under construction Takoma Commons building also underplay the actual size of the structure to the neighborhood's subsequent dismay. We won't be fooled again. This project is way bigger than that one and would be way more destructive to our neighborhood. Please send it back to the drawing board. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Jeffrey Silverstone, to be followed by Peter Kovar.
I'm Jeffrey Silverstone. I represent Seekers Church, a DC church located across Carroll Street from the Tacoma station. We walk, bike, drive, and take the subway to church. Last year, we also hosted over 600 events throughout the week. We consider the station site to be a gateway between DC and Maryland and the center of an integrated Tacoma community. Like us, WMATA recognizes the importance of biking. The notice for this meeting cites the improvement of pedestrian bicycle access to the station. The Tacoma Station Technical Memorandum of 2013 notes that Tacoma had the second highest level of bike parking in the metro system. And this was before the recently installed and heavily used ride-on station, as well as the planned bike station for 105 bikes to be installed this year. While all this bike parking is good, the EYA plan development does nothing to improve bicycle access to the station. The circulation plans analysis, which is Exhibit 4 of the handout for this meeting, omits bicycles. This is because the proposed building, by providing a narrow sidewalk along Eastern and a narrow path through the garage, blocks bikes from accessing the station from the north. We believe that the building must provide a zoning compliant setback from Eastern in order to allow bicycle access. The Metropolitan Branch Trail is an 8-mile trail that runs from Union Station to Silver Spring. It connects to the Tacoma Station along the east using an on-street alignment along Cedar and Eastern Avenue. Moreover, the MBT is being designed to also run on the west side of the rail tracks. The proposed building blocks the eastern alignment, while the EYA plan from 2007 provided an 11-foot shared use path, 5-foot buffer, and a 24-foot travel lanes to support the alignment. This 2014 EYA plan does none of this. Furthermore, while the western alignment runs just a few feet from the bicycle entrance to the station, this plan does nothing to allow western access to the entrance. Even with a jog around the elevator room to save the cost of moving the machine room, this plan passes on an opportunity to finance opening up the bicycle entrance to the trail, as is called for in the DC Central District Plan. Furthermore, a through tunnel would provide handicapped access to new residential development on the western side of the tracks, such as the 150 units planned for Spring Place. The Tacoma Station should promote bicycle traffic, not block it. Thank you.
Thank you. Peter Kovar, to be followed by Loretta Newman.
Thank you. My name is Peter Kovar. I've lived in Takoma Park, Maryland, for about 22 years, about 5 houses from the development site. I'm a member of DC Maryland Neighbors for Tacoma Transit. We can create an attractive transit-oriented building at the Metro site if there is serious engagement by EYA. That hasn't happened. I know of just one public EYA meeting for Maryland residents held last year. The current proposal is incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood, in part because there has been so little consultation. I join my neighbors in asking the board to insist on the creation of a formal process for community engagement. Without that, although the project's impact falls heavily on Maryland residents, because the site is solely in Washington, D.C., Marylanders will have little influence on design and structural details. Those will be decided mainly in the D.C. zoning process. Thus, this hearing could be the last chance for Marylanders to communicate with a body obliged to consider our views. Like many of my neighbors, I have concerns about the size of the building, cuts in public parking, loss of green space, access to the station, setback from the street, and impact on traffic. A genuine give and take with the community would help us reach consensus on those points and produce a win-win-win project, one that enhances transit, creates more housing, and is compatible. Last week, EYA sent a letter stating, we're in the very beginning stages, and then we're currently finalizing the details. It's discouraging to hear that EYA is both in the beginning stages and finalizing the details. They apparently want WMATA approval before key community concerns are resolved. But WMATA can help ensure there is real community involvement and avoid protracted legal and political challenges. EYA's latest letter says they plan community meetings to hear our thoughts on design, landscaping, and architecture. But without a formal structure for that community input, the outreach will be just PR. Therefore, I agree with those who express support for creating a neighborhood design working group. EYA says the development process will take years, so a few months of work by a committee of residents, business owners, transit users, and other stakeholders will not cause significant delay. I urge EYA to support the establishment of the neighborhood design working group with everything on the table, and I urge the board to vote on the report for today's hearing only when there is a commitment to establish that group. This recommendation doesn't exceed the board's mission. The hearing announcement states the board is required to consider, among other things, land use, population, environmental amenities, aesthetics, and the beauty and dignity of the nation's capital city. Now is the time for the board to recognize the unique cross-border nature of this proposal and strike a blow for community engagement rather than rubber stamping a development plan. In closing, I note that the name of the proposed development is Takoma Connected. Moving forward on Takoma Connected, without including the Maryland side of that connection, would render the name meaningless. Thanks.
Thank you. Loretta Newman, to be followed by Sarah Hayden. Thank you. Okay.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I do hope that the purpose of this hearing is to hear from the community and to take into account what we're saying and maybe make some changes as you go forward. Otherwise, you know, you're wasting everybody's time, and I think that's been pointed out before. I live in a home I live at Piney Branch and Blair Road. I'm just 3 blocks from the Takoma Metro station. I've been involved. My husband has lived here for 15 years. I've lived here for almost 40. So we know this area. We've been here before. We testified before at the previous ones. And actually, it was a decade ago when this all started. We're not opposed to the development, nor are we supporting the development. We really do seek some constructive changes. And here are our suggestions for improvements. First of all, the green space. There are 2 green spaces actually on it, and I've looked at all the maps. I've looked at everything that WMATA put up, which is pretty there's not a lot on the website, but what's there I've looked at. And there are 2 green spaces. One, the corner of Cedar and Carroll, and I'm glad to see that shows it being preserved is open space. But in the text of the proposal, or what's written, there's nothing that says for sure that that's going to be permanent. So we want things in writing. We've learned in the past with WMATA, if we don't have it in writing, we can't count on it when years go by. Second of all, the buffer, as has been pointed out before, between the parking lot and the apartments and the houses, of course, on Eastern Avenue, that needs to be preserved, and we are very saddened to see that road. And actually, it wasn't until tonight I realized that not only is that strip coming in for the driveway where trucks and such will access, but there's a whole piece that looms into the rest of that buffer area. At any rate, we urge you to save the buffer area and find another way to access into the area. The size and scale has been pointed out is it's looms over, it dwarfs anything that's ever been built in Tacoma, D.C. That really, it's not that it can't be big, but this is too big. 70-some feet is higher than anything we have in our community, and this is in the heart of our historic district. So we ask you to please, that could be lowered, and if it means that WMATA gets a little less money from the developer, then the developer will make the same amount of money that they would make anyway because they're just making a few fewer units. So we urge you to reconfigure that. Multifamily units, you even talk about multifamily, but there's nothing in the written statement about how many units are going to have 2 bedrooms. If you're going to have families in an apartment, you got to have at least 2 bedrooms. And there's nothing in there to say that. And lastly, I live on Piney Branch Road, and I was shocked just this afternoon when I'd already written this, and then I discovered in your traffic analysis this proposal to eliminate curbside parking on northbound Piney Branch Road between Dahlia Street and Eastern Avenue. If you all know where that is, Dahlia, and that's where Trinity Church is, and then it goes in front of my house, and please let me finish because it's not fair to the church, it's not fair to us even to propose it, but also you have no jurisdiction over parking on our streets. That's a city
I'm
decision.
sorry. Thank you very much.
Yes, well, thank you.
Sarah Hayden, to be followed by Christine Simpson.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sarah Hayden. I live in Takoma Park, Maryland. I have a couple of... Hello? Okay.
Yes, there we
I'm
go.
Sarah Hayden. I live in Takoma Park, Maryland. I have 2 main points. One, Board of Directors of WMATA, do your job. You have an independent responsibility here to evaluate the project in its entirety. And this is a responsibility that includes evaluation of the design and impact not just on parking, which hasn't been fully analyzed under your traffic study, parking and traffic, but also, as other people have mentioned, in your compact, you have the responsibility to consider data with respect to current and prospective conditions in the transit zone. That includes Maryland, as well as the District of Columbia, and including without limitation, land use, population, and preservation of the beauty and dignity of the nation's capital. You need to look at the design, and you need to independently approve the design before you pass it on to DC. This is not a responsibility that you can abdicate or delegate to DC. So I urge you to stop, don't approve any joint development agreement, but fully vet this design independent of DC. And also, you need to comply with federal law, which includes but is not limited to Section 106 review under the National Historic Preservation Act. And in these discussions and the propaganda from EYA and information from WMATA, I find it unfortunately absent from it the fact that this is in a national and local historic district, as well as it abuts another national and local historic district in Maryland. And obviously the community members keep on reminding you, but I see that as a huge fatal omission in the public information provided on this project. And I want to assure you that the community will take any and all necessary steps to ensure that WMATA complies with all laws and fulfills its responsibilities. 2, I'm addressing this to WMATA and EYA, stop wasting our time. Come up with a project that at least complies with current DC zoning. You are on the cusp of approving a design that doesn't comply with DC zoning, and that's hopeful that the DC Zoning Commission will approve this. Well, as many may be aware, EYA and its other partners in a joint venture have not fared very well in front of the Zoning Commission with respect to the McMillan Reservoir project. They were shot down. So it's a waste of time for you to approve a project that may not be even approved by DC, even if you could delegate that authority to review the design to DC, which you can. So stop wasting our time. Do a project that is thoughtful to the community. You've provided 2 designs that are fatally flawed. Work hard on a design that everyone can get behind and support, and so we can get this thing built. Secondly, and this is to EYA, stop with the fluff propaganda. You're promising a vibrant community. We are a vibrant community. We are a transit-oriented development community. So stop with that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Christine Simpson, to be followed by James DeLuigi.